In honor of Women's History Month, Running Explained Podcast was delighted to have Ashley Mateo and Olivia Witherite on to talk about their respective businesses that they've built themselves and where we are in women's sports. We dived into how they went from being runners and being active participants in the sport to building something on their own. What I loved most about this conversation was how honest they were. We talked about how it's who has historically controlled the narrative in running, where the gaps were, what financial independence looks like for women in the industry, and what frustrates them as not only business owners, but as women in sport. This was a very honest conversation. You better buckle up and get ready to listen to these inspiring, powerful, and thoughtful conversations from Ashley and Olivia. And I know that everyone will get something out of it. Enjoy. Welcome to the Running Explained podcast, your go-to resource for learning the how, what, and why of running so you can train smarter, race stronger, and actually enjoy the process with a more human approach. We're your hosts, Coach Amanda Katz.
And Coach Nicholas Stava. And in honor of Women's History Month, we have a dual guest, our first two-guest episode, talking about women in sports. And we have with us here Ashley Mateo, who is founder of RunHer Magazine, and Olivia Witherite, founder of OnBase Collective. And both these women are doing amazing things in women's sports right now. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
So we are going to start with a very simple yet complex question, and we will go in alpha order for this one. Who are you, Ashley?
Who am I? Existentially or job title? I mean, how deep do we want to go here? Who am I? I am the founder and editor-in-chief of RunHer Magazine. I am a longtime journalist in the health and wellness space. I've interviewed both of you for stories before. And I am a runner. I would say I'm a marathoner. That is my go-to distance. And I am also a running coach. And so I really, over the past 10 years or so, have kind of built my life around running and the joy that I found in the sport. And that really culminated this year with the launch of RunHer Magazine.
You got an A+. You answered the question. Olivia?
I would give her an A because she's a little too humble, but I guess we'll get into that. But other than that, great job, Ashley.
We love that.
But hi, I'm Olivia. Like Nick said, I am the owner of OnBase Collective. It's a small social media and brand marketing agency. I've spent my whole career working in the sports world and took the leap and started my own thing about a year and a half ago. And one of the most fun projects that I work on is Athlos, which is a women's only track and field event that has happened in New York for the last 2 years, expanding to a league this year. So a lot more fun to come. And I'm a runner as well. I feel like there's so much institutional knowledge to be gained here because I'm definitely the least experienced runner in this group. But I started running for fun after college, but started to take it more seriously when I moved here to New York, ran my first marathon, ran my first and second New York marathon. And, you know, as it goes, I'm hooked. So I run with a club here in New York and have loved the community so much and met Amanda through Brooks Running. So I'm on their micro influencer team, the Brooks Running Collective, which is how I met the lovely Amanda. And yeah, it's fun when everything comes together running wise from work to play. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I love these answers, ladies. These were great. You guys are doing so much stuff.
They're very busy. They're very busy and blessed. And I would give Olivia a B because she also was very humble. She could have brought that up to an A+. But don't worry. We'll have time to give you both your flowers because you are really changing the game for women's running and putting a spotlight on it. So let's dive right in. We want to talk about, you both spoke about being runners, and whether you've been running for 3 years or 30 years, when did running stop being something that you were just a participant in and something that you actually wanted to shape?
That's a good question. Olivia, do you want to go first or?
Sure, I'll go first. It is a great question. I think for me, it really is seeing how running changed me. I think I started running more because I was going through a lot of stuff in my life. It was like a great escape for me and sort of a way for me to regulate and process emotions. And I was able to see, what it could do for me and the community of friends that it's brought me in New York, which has really made me feel like a part of something versus just a solo runner. So I think that was a huge part of it. And then in the last year or so, I've gotten more involved into women's sports in general, particularly track and field, which is very, very different from marathon running. I can run a average marathon. I think I would pass out if I tried to run a 100, but seeing these like incredible stories of these athletes who are just like, they're just amazing, the amount of work that they put in, and it isn't talked about enough, I don't think, particularly from a track and field lens. So that was another reason why I feel like I wanted to immerse myself more in it, is because I just think there's so much potential out there. Obviously, Ashley knows this, is doing this in like a long form format, but there's just so many untapped stories out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I came to it from a storytelling perspective from the start. Obviously, I was a journalist. I started in music and entertainment and ended up in health and wellness. And when I first started running, I started writing about running to learn more about running. I would have questions about my own journey. And so I would find coaches, find experts, and report those stories, and hope that in discovering those answers for myself, it would also help other readers. And I think over the past couple of years, I just got to a point where the stories that I wanted to tell were deeper than just general service stories, how to be a stronger runner, how to prevent injury, things like that, which are absolutely great. Obviously, there's a huge need for that kind of content. But in addition to that, I wanted to tell stories about the people who are in the sport, the people who are changing the sport, the problems within the sport, and especially around female runners. And I kept coming up against a wall where those stories were just not getting assigned. And it really frustrated me that there wasn't a space for telling women-centric stories. And there also wasn't a space for telling long-form stories. I think a lot of the content right now is really short and really clickable, and that's great. That has a purpose. But over the course of my career, which I started in print magazines, over the course of that career, we've just moved so far away from those longer form narrative stories. And I think people still want them. I think people want to really immerse themselves in, 1,000+ words instead of just like a 40-word thread, And so nobody else was doing it. And I just thought it was time to create that space. So here we are.
Yeah, guys, I love that. I love the story of how to, when running became something you want to shape, because I've been around running since 1996. And I've lived through the days where Let's Run was the only place that talked about running. And then, where everyone had a blog in the early 2010s, and long form, just talking about their running and everything. And people loved to read it. In the days of even Instagram in the beginning, where you'd have a caption that was 2,000 words and everyone would read it, to where now it's, if you don't capture someone's attention in 3 seconds, then it's lost. So I love the storytelling angle. I love telling about these longer topics. I love shaping running to the way that I always think it's amazing, the community, telling these stories, because they're out there. And for a while, it was just your friends at a local run club where the stories were told. And now it's a story that can be told everywhere. And there's so many interesting things that people are doing that's more than just running. Like, there's amazing stories, and I love hearing them. And I love people shaping running in this wonderful way.
Yeah, and I think that you were just talking a little bit about it. So we'll start with you, Ashley, because we definitely wanted to dive into what stories that why did you select print, right? And what does a physical publication bring to the sport?
I'll start with that part first because I was just thinking about this. But I think that physical media, it's like it is a tangible product, right? Like it exists in the world. You can hold it. And that makes it literally a connection point, right? It's a connection point with the content that's inside those pages. It's a connection point with the person you might share that magazine with, you might pass it along to. It's a connection to the people who contributed to those pages. And so I think that in this world of like very fast content, I'll call it, you're constantly scrolling. There's always something new. It's very easy to get distracted. I think people crave something that they can really immerse themselves in and hold and is not going to disappear. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen a headline that I want to click on social media and then the app accidentally refreshes and I'm like, no, it's gone. Okay. So this is not going to disappear. I mean, it's something that we built it to be a quality premium product that you display on your coffee table. It's something that you display as part of who you are and the kind of things that you support in the world. And so when people see it, they know a little bit about who you are and what you support. And so when it comes to the storytelling inside, it's not what you're going to find on the internet. Like this is not a publication for service journalism because that does belong on the internet. You want to search that, right? You're going to search, how do I, find the best shoes for me? Or, how do I get faster? That's not the kind of content that I want in our pages because it's not, you don't need to sit with it, right? That's something that you reference time and time again. You look it up each time you need it. This is something that you take your time with and you really absorb the stories. And so they go a little bit deeper. They're about athletes who are doing things differently than, whatever formula was given to them when they first graduated college, or people who have dealt with leaving the sport and what that means for their identity, or systemic problems within the running industry and how we can change them. And my goal is, with the stories that we publish, I hope that we get to a point where they're driving a larger conversation off the page within the industry, within the community, and hopefully eventually driving some change that addresses what women want and need from the sport.
I'm envisioning myself like I'm somebody who frequents the New York Public Library, and I just see people sitting in the library reading RunHer because that's like it's something that you're reading, you sit with, you have to close for a few seconds and be like, absorb the messaging and the power of the words. So speaking of that, I have to put a little note down. If it's not already, I would like to request it at my library.
You should. I love that idea. I don't even know how you go about doing that, but
I do. So I'm going to do it.
Amazing.
And I think that's a great move. Okay. So that was all beautiful. Olivia, I wanted to talk about what made you build OnBase Collective instead of working inside someone else's brand.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, we can take this offline after too, because I need all of the Amanda advice. But I am fortunate. It came at a time where I was at a job that wasn't really a good fit for me, and I started picking up work on the side and sort of fell into this. It was a crossroads moment of, okay, am I going to go left or am I going to go right? I couldn't do both anymore. It just wasn't serving me or my current job to do both. And so I took the leap. It's not like the sexiest story, but I think for me, it was about just trusting myself, trusting the network that I've built up, trusting my friends who have been in my corner. It's scary. I mean, I'm sure all of us sort of know this. It isn't like necessarily the safest route to have, especially when the safety net is not infinite. I think that I set a goal for myself, which was like, do it for a year, or maybe a benchmark, do it for a year and see how you're feeling. And I flew past that. And so I'm really grateful. I think for me, it was just the right time and getting to sort of choose projects that I am excited about. That is a huge part. There's always going to be parts of the jobs that you don't like, or things that might not totally align with what you 100% are thrilled about doing every day, but to have the opportunity to over index on stuff that I'm excited about, that I think is making a difference, that is in the space that I want to be in. Particularly right now, it is women's running. I think for me it's a huge win. So that's why I decided, ask me again in a year and we'll see where we're at. But hey, I think for now I'm feeling super, super fortunate.
That's awesome. What I love that both of you said was that you sort of started your own thing because in some ways, when you were trying to tell stories or write articles, you were given certain things to talk about. And when you maybe promoted a woman's article, they might push back and be like, well, how can we also include men? I'm not saying that's what happened, but I just assume. But in some ways, what I love is that you started something to create and control the narrative that you wanted to tell. And I think there's so much in that is a story for lots of people, where you feel like you're not able to kind of talk about the things you want because of the direction of wherever you work. Media is a strange place right now. And I think lots of people don't have control. And so I read things and I'm like, you only make the assumption that they wrote this is how they feel. So pulling this full circle, what I guess I'm getting at is I love that both of you started something where you could tell the stories you want and, control that narrative and talk about women's sports and not have to also make sure you talk about men's sports enough. As a male, there's plenty of coverage of men's sports. I've seen it my entire life. There could be definitely more, and these avenues you guys have are great to have exposure for women's sports.
Thanks. I think love an ally. And I think for me, I'm not capital J journalist like Ashley is, but I worked in sports media my whole career. So I was at The Athletic and had the opportunity to do a few bylines on stories. One was about when the Marlins hired their first Asian GM, who was a woman. And I think I was able to write a piece about that, another piece about young women playing baseball. And I was able to see that there is an appetite for these stories. And I think on top of it too, there was something really special in seeing people respond to a story that was essentially me talking about seeing someone that looked like me in the space. And that just wasn't a thing that I saw before. I think there's still obviously a ton of room for that in running specifically, but across all sports as well. So, sometimes it really just is the opportunity and an editor that trusts in you. And I'm definitely grateful for those opportunities, because I think it's allowed me to say yes now that I'm in that position more, and also realize that, I'm not so necessarily alone when I am doing these stories or these projects or looking to pitch something.
I think it's important to acknowledge that, yes, we RunHer may be doing capital J journalism in book, but all of the other platforms that we've mentioned, the early 2000s blogs, Instagram, TikTok, there are so many ways to storytell now. And I think they all can exist in the same media landscape. I do think it's important for the content consumer to have some ability to discern what is capital J journalism and what is not. But all of those forms of storytelling can coexist and should coexist, because they reach people in different ways. Even just looking at what we do at RunHer, yes, we have the print story, but Olivia, we've talked about this. It's how do we translate the print story into a social format? I want us to get into video at some point. I want to be able to do live coverage of events. That's not happening yet. I mean, we're the tiniest team, but all of those forms of storytelling are important. I would say equally important in the media landscape. And it's just a matter of knowing how to tell the right story on each platform.
Yeah, it makes me think about, there's such a strong difference between just being visible on social media versus creating an impact on social media, and an impact in storytelling in general. And unfortunately, there's no regulatory body to provide the guidelines to content consumers when they are when this content is coming across their page. So the more runner mags and on-base collectives that exist, the better off we will all be as consumers of this content. And that requires what I kind of wanted to tackle next, which is a very loaded question. What does financial independence look like for women in this industry?
That's tough.
I think we have very different experiences with the financial side of the sport right now, just given the projects that we work on. I feel like there's two levels of that. For me, as a freelancer, my income was entirely dependent on other people saying yes or no to my ideas, which is frustrating at times because the industry shifts, the priorities, we're pivoting to video, now we're pivoting to social, now we're pivoting back to video, now we're pivoting to newsletters. Like, that's really hard to build a secure financial life on. I'm not going to say it's that much more secure right now to launch your own business, which, like Olivia said, it takes a leap of faith to start your own thing. But there's a lot more control in how I work with brands and people, and the financial aspect of the magazine is really important to me in that, one, I really do want our advertising partners to invest in this project. The ROI may not be the same as a magazine that has a circulation of 30,000 right now, but I see it as a bigger investment into building a platform that should exist in this space. And part of building that platform means having the funds to pay people fairly to create the content that goes in the magazine. Somebody responded to me on Threads today asking if I paid everybody associated with the magazine. And I was like, what kind of question is that? Of course I paid everybody. Like, not only did I pay everybody, I'm paying people better rates than most places I was writing for as a freelancer. And I think what this all comes down to is, I think you really have to invest in the kind of content you want to see in the world. And whether that's coming from, a bigger outside investor, which is not something we have at this point, or the community who's investing in subscriptions and helping us build that circulation base. If you want to see more content around women's running, you have to financially support it because it can't be created without finances. And so that's something that we have been very aware of, and like it's $70 for a subscription. That is a lot pricier than a newsstand magazine, but we're not a newsstand magazine. We are making a premium product, and we are also building a platform that doesn't currently exist. And so I think whenever I have conversations with people about the financial side of this, I'm like, you need money for it to exist. And that means subscriptions, that means investors, that means partners. And, we're still in that early stage of building that. And when we have more of that, you will see more from Runner, but that takes time.
Yeah, I think from a personal standpoint too, something that you said, Ashley, like this is the cost and this is what it is, like standing on business that this is my rates for what I do. I think I've spent a lot of time when I was first starting out, I'm still learning this, of like trying to make myself marketable by lessening my rates, which I think like in turn it's not good for me. It's like, it's making me feel like I have less value than I'm actually bringing to the table. So for me, I think like standing firm in the rates that I have set for myself that make sense for me, that make sense with the decade plus of experience I'm bringing into my work, I think is really important for me. And it's stressful, right, to go into a pitch or something and feel like you might have already pressed yourself out of something. But like also I know what I'm worth, and I have to tell myself that a lot because it doesn't always come out as confidently as I'm saying it now. But I think that that's a huge part. Like, my work, it's something that I'm proud of, and I want to my like rates to reflect that. And then when you're asking about like financial independence, I'm still figuring out a lot of the stuff. My business is new, whatever. But I think for me, one thing that has made me feel validated this last year is freedom. Like I and freedom of my own time. If I can schedule in a 2-hour run in the middle of my day, that was not possible when I was at a 9 to 5. If I want to take some time for myself and shut my laptop or not work on a Saturday, not work on a Friday, like then I have the opportunity to do that. So like it might not always look like, oh my gosh, I'm making X amount of money. But if it looks like I am feeling some sort of freedom in my schedule, for me, that is like invaluable for this time of my life until I get into my busy season in the summer, fall. So I'm grateful for that.
What I love that you both sort of said is, asking sort of the community and others to, buy into the content they want to. I think that's important. A lot of people see people make things they like, see people start businesses and they're like, oh, I support you. But do you? Or you just like, is it just an offhanded comment? Or are you actually going to, I'm putting a lot of work into like helping women's sports and growing this business or, helping work with brands to create content around it. And are you fully invested or are you just, saying you are? That's an important, maybe I didn't phrase it the nicest way, but too often I feel like people want certain things and they aren't willing to put in the investment towards it that other people are working really hard to do, because none of this is easy. As someone who quit his job last year and, jumped into a business I knew nothing about, I just knew about running and, but wanted, like Olivia said, that freedom. I get to see my kids at the beginning of the day and the end of the day every day and spend that time. It's important, but it's hard work. And, if you want to fully help, if you want to invest in these people, you want to see them tell these stories, like there is an investment. You need to buy in too as the community. You need to help because this is hard. And, you guys are doing great stuff. And if we want to see women's sports grow, we have to put some of our money behind it.
Yeah, I think there are some massive gender gaps in sports media, whether it's journalism or photography. And I think content consumers, to use that phrase again, have become so accustomed to content being free. You just expect to log on and search, a Runner's World article and have it not be behind a paywall. But somebody's creating that content. Somebody has to do the work to bring that to you. And I think if people want to see more of that, if we want to change the numbers when it comes to women's sports media, that does take money. It takes paying female photographers fairly. It takes giving them the same opportunities. It takes giving, female journalists the opportunities and paying them fairly. And so again, bringing it back to Runner in creating this platform, like that was a non-negotiable for me. Like we are paying as fair rates as we can as a startup because I want people to be able to put the time in to create the types of stories I want. I can't pay a journalist $200 for a 2,000 word feature. That's insane. You can't live on that. That's not real money when it comes to a career. That's a side hustle. And for me, journalism has never been a side hustle, and this project is not a side hustle. And so anyone who's contributing to it, I want to pay them fairly so that they can put in the time that it takes to deliver quality content.
Yeah, if I can just add there too, I think that that's a really good point is like, obviously fair rates are a huge part of this, but just if you are in a position to hire, whether it's freelancers, contract people, just or full-time, just being really intentional with who you are hiring for that limited budget, those limited roles. At Athlos last year, like it's a women's track and field event. We didn't work with just women, but I think we had 60 creators maybe. And I think we ended up with more than 70% women. And I think that was a really powerful part of our story as well. If you are in that position to be able to get people into roles and amplify their stories, why should it should be the best of the best, and you're going to get the best of the best if your rates are fair. And then also just like considering that the people telling those stories can accurately reflect like the audience as well.
Yeah, that's great. I love all that. I want to talk a little bit about maybe a little more running centric. And so, I've been involved in track and field since 1996, but over the last 10 years, I'd say 10, maybe 15 years, the women's side of the sport has captured my attention so much more, especially distance runners, but all aspects. I feel like I really enjoy following the women's side. And what I guess I want to push to you guys is, what do you think professional athletes on the women's side of running do so very well on either storytelling or getting messaging out or just being almost so much more popular than the men's side of running?
I can speak to some of the athletes that I've worked with, particularly those who are creating their own content, telling their own stories. And it is amazing and empowering. I would say a lot of it was unfortunately born out of necessity, though, because other people weren't telling their stories. Like, I see some really incredible athletes who have built up these content empires for themselves. You look at Gabby Thomas or Keely Hodgkinson, they're creating content on their YouTube channels that they own, and it's amazing. It's like really engaging content. They've invested into it with their teams. But, before a few years ago, they weren't, and maybe outside of a day or two in the Olympics, like that's the exposure that they're getting. So sorry if you hear like a car horn. Welcome to New York. But I think like it was sort of born out of, hey, like I'm going to tell my story my way because whether I have to or I want to, but it was sort of like born out of need. And I think they've really gone with it and run with it. And I think that like flexibility, that storytelling, that creativity really shines through in a lot of people competing in women's track, maybe more than other sports. They're also just like awesome. That sounds like such a dumb answer. They're so freaking fast. They're so prepared. The diligence it takes to be a runner at any level, any distance is, to me, just like absolutely mind blowing. Can't wrap my head around it. So I think that, and I think that there's just a lot of marketability. I think once hopefully brands are starting to pay attention, we're seeing more brand deals. We're seeing more opportunities for these women because they deserve it and they just fit in. Like, it's not like putting a square peg in a round hole. These women are great for these kind of campaigns. They're marketable, they're smart, they're talented, they're the hardest workers I've ever seen. And so like, why not work with them? And I hope that this is like a continuing trend for sure.
Yeah, I'll second everything that Olivia just said, because it's dead on. And I reported a story for issue 3, which comes out in April, about the sort of rise of female athlete managers and basically the people who are sort of behind the scenes for these athletes. I think for a long time, female athletes in general, not just running, have been forced into this blueprint that was built around male athletes. And it's just not the same. It doesn't work the same for the female athletes. And so to Olivia's point, they've had to create their own pathways towards exposure and success and financial freedom and all those things. And now we're starting to see that change for a number of reasons. But I also want to highlight that we're finally in an era where, we're 50 or so, more than 50 years out from Title IX. Women have grown up with access to sport. We're starting to see research that supports female training, female nutrition, things like that. It's not just based on men anymore. And so I think that's why we're seeing female athletes just absolutely crush it. Like, they're making bigger leaps than male athletes because they're newer to this. They're newer to having a support system that actually supports their bodies and their performance. And so I just think it's more exciting to see it right now because they're finally reaping the rewards of science starting to catch up, brand opportunities starting to catch up. And like Olivia said, they're just awesome. Like, it's so much more fun to watch these athletes who are putting themselves out there in a really compelling, relatable storytelling way. Like, when I watch these athletes you mentioned on social media, it's like, I feel like I know them to some extent. Like, I have an insider view into the way they train and their journey, and that makes me more invested in them. And it's not to say that men aren't doing that, because there absolutely are male runners who are telling those stories. But I think women have had to do it for longer. So I do think that they're a little bit better at that side of it right now. And with science and all that catching up, it's just like it's created this moment where women are just absolutely dominating.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. And you're right. Storytelling, they do, I remember Naz Elite and the women who told great stories. They were one of the first to really share their training. It was followed the Bowerman Babes when they used to hang out in a house and tell stories and just be fun. And like, those are the stories I remember growing up in the earlier days of Instagram, and just how good everyone was at telling a story and sharing. Because this is the other thing, running used to be so secretive. Everyone, even in the beginning of early Instagram days, no one would share what they were training, what was going on, their workouts. I think fears that coaches' workouts would get out, when in reality, like, there's no secret sauce as a coach. It doesn't matter if someone knows I gave you 20 miles with some pickups in it. It's probably been done before. So like people just started telling the story and women were doing it much better. And to kind of clarify this point all the way around, there are other sports where men's and women's basketball, LeBron is the most popular athlete in the world, but Caitlin Clark is also amazing too, but not at the same level of popularity. But in running, all the pros are just as popular and women are just up there. And so I didn't mean to I just wanted to kind of bring it to running, and the perspective of this sport is that the women and men are just as popular, and the women in most cases are what we're rooting for and what we're following, and we're here for the women's race.
I'll just add one more thought to that. I think something that I've noticed and covered a couple times now is there is such a sense of camaraderie. I think I'll talk about distance running here because I know this less about track and field. But, marathoning, road racing is the biggest participatory sport, right? Like that's what everybody can relate to. I can't really relate to going to the track and, doing a 400 relay, but I can relate to doing a 5K, a 10K up to a marathon. And when you see the women racing those distances, there is such a sense of camaraderie there. They're all supporting each other. They look like they're happy to be there. There's a lot of joy in the racing. Yes, they're obviously, once the gun goes off, it's like, all bets are off. Everybody's racing each other. But even then you can see them working together. And sorry, my light but you can see them working together and like celebrating each other in the sport. And I think especially in American running, it's like the Americans want each other to win. And so if that means supporting somebody who's having their best day, they're going to do that, not at the expense of their own race, but within that race. And I think that is really exciting and relatable to watch. And it's one of the reasons I love watching women's running so much.
Yeah, I mean, I was at US Indoors last week and same thing. These people are running a 15. Nikki Hiltz ends up winning the race. They kick past the other runners, and immediately, they're all hugging at the finish line. Like, there's such a interesting mix of like serious competition and like camaraderie between them. I think it's so cool. The other thing I'll say with running, which I think is a reason why women are and have potential to be just as popular or more popular than the men, and see it in tennis as well. I mean, when you hear tennis, I think of Serena Williams. It's like equal pay. Like it's not always going to be the case in every event, but I think if you look at the WNBA versus the NBA, which you mentioned, like it's going to be really hard to be just as famous if you're making 1/100th of what another player is making. So if you see it, tennis set the way. I think there's opportunities in other sports as well, and with track and field, whether it's like the Diamond League, whatever, or other leagues, like if the pay is equal between men's and women's races, I think that there's more opportunity for these things to stay equal among many other facets of the sport. Pay women.
Period. Over and over again. That's actually, that's one of the biggest things for me that feels very frustrating about sports in general. So I wanted to know from you both, what frustrates you? So a couple of things. What do you think is, and you've mentioned some of them, is still broken in running culture that we're not talking enough about, that we need to be talking about? And what is frustrating you right now about running media and branding? This is a safe space.
I've got a lot, but I can start with the one that popped into my head right away. I work with a ton of influencers as my job, like from the other side. And I think that there is a huge value in having content creators and influencers in your marketing strategies. I get really anxious when I see people promoting something without the knowledge there. Marathon training plans in particular, whatever it may be, like promoting running plans with no insight into nutrition or recovery. I get that. Like I work in social. I understand you can't tell a full story in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, a few minutes. But I have grown to really love running, and it makes me sad to see people sidelined from something that was like, a post that they may have blindly followed, or a routine they may have blindly followed without full knowledge of what they were getting themselves into. A marathon is hard. I struggle with them. I've only run a few. I have some more coming up this year, but I've seen a lot of people running a marathon every month, or people going and feeling like they're pushing through an injury that seems dangerous. I don't know the solution to that, but I have been definitely discouraged from seeing that push so heavily without a well-rounded story.
Hey, wait, Ashley, before you go, Olivia, I just wanted to clarify for maybe our audience and maybe for me, because you mentioned it. What do you look as different between a content creator and an influencer? Like, what's the difference between the two? Because I sometimes use them interchangeably, and I think I should.
Yeah, I will as well sometimes. For me, I think a content creator, at least when I'm hiring, a content creator is someone who is coming in with a more specific lens. So I'll put in there like someone who is telling the story of running through photography or videography, or like digital storytelling. An influencer for me, I use as a little bit of a broader term. I think like all influencers create content in some ways, but not all content creators are influencers. Maybe that's the best way of looking at it. I think there's space for both, but for when I think of influencers, I think of more like wide ranging, potentially bigger audiences, without like a specific like skilled niche going into a project. But I also will sometimes use it interchangeably, but that's sort of how I'm thinking of it.
Thanks.
I mean, for what it's worth, Condé Nast has posted editorial jobs with the title content creator. So I think you're absolutely right. I mean, a writer can be a content creator. I create content online. I'm also a journalist, but I think influencer sometimes gets a negative connotation. And to piggyback on what you were saying, Olivia, I think there's just been this like, we're in an era of like such poor media literacy. And I wish that people who are consuming this content had a better understanding of how to vet content and understand who is, Amanda, I know we've talked about this before, but like who is an expert and who is sharing their personal opinions. That's a big difference. And one is not wrong. It's not wrong to share your opinion, but your opinion is not necessarily based on scientific research, evidence, or even information that will influence a larger pool of people who are watching your content. So for example, to say like the Alpha Fly is the fastest shoe out there. It's like, okay, that's your opinion. It's the fastest shoe for you. The Adios Pro might be the fastest shoe for me. To say it boosts performance by X% according to whatever study, that's a different statement. And so I wish that people watching this content could discern which was real and which was not, because I think there's been this like flattening of content where somebody who has a PhD and how many years of clinical experience and lab experience or whatever is literally on the same level, or maybe even has less followers than somebody who can run a fast marathon and gets a lot of swag from brands. Again, both are valid offerings to social media platforms, but understanding how to differentiate that type of information, I think, is really important. And then my other frustration with the running media or sports media landscape at the moment, I think, is just that coverage gap we talked about. I think running is still very often presented through a male first lens. And some of it, people might argue, well, that's just how the race is set up. I'm thinking about at the Boston Marathon, how, they'll cut away from the women at mile 18 when things are starting to get exciting to show the male finishers. And I'm not saying we shouldn't show the male finishers, but how do we show both races in their entirety for the people who do want to see what happens when somebody starts to break away from the pack while the men are coming into the finish? And I don't have a solution for that yet. I don't think I'm the only person who can solve this. I think it's a systemic problem, but I hope that the people higher up in some of these scenarios start to think about equal ways to present sports. I mean, we see it on the WNBA level where women just aren't given the same type of airtime as men. But when we do give them that airtime, the audience is there. And so I think for women's sports in general, the audience is absolutely there. We just have to make watching and supporting them more accessible. And again, that's a systemic problem. I'm not going to solve that. Olivia's not going to solve that. We're not going to solve that in a podcast. But I think if we can start to rethink the way we present some of these things and put women on equal footing, it might change the game.
Yeah, the race coverage one is always bad. Allison Wade, Fast Women, always sometimes puts out little comments of, we got 11 minutes of the women's coverage and 86 minutes of the men's. And you're like, oh, wow. And like, that's really bad. And I don't know why that always is the case, because sometimes, and you're right, we're not going to fix it today, because sometimes it's a local broadcast doing it, putting it out, to the world, and they have limited control versus, a bigger entity kind of controlling it. And to your other point about being on the same level as like PhD level creators versus just regular influencers, the tricky part too I always see is those PhD level, those science driven people have a bunch of followers who are also science driven people. So they're all arguing in their comments. And then the influencer doesn't have science people following them. So no one's arguing. They're just like, way to go. Great job. That's amazing. So we're not even getting like that crossover because their followings are so different that we're just stuck with the person who's doing science is getting argued over the minutia when the general point is right. And the influencers just saying whatever they want. And everyone's in their comments like, yes, way to go. You're amazing. You got it. So anyway.
I do think there are a lot of influencers who are, I guess the difference for me comes down to like, are you an expert in what you're talking about? Are you an expert in social media? I think there are a lot of people in running who are really good at understanding the algorithm, knowing what content works, knowing how to speak in those videos to get people engaged or riled up. Even if it's like to get negative comments, that's engagement. And the algorithm can't differentiate between, good or bad. It's just like, oh, people are commenting, people are sharing. And so this must be good. We're going to elevate it. Whereas the scientific stuff is like, it's less sexy. It's a lot more like, well, it depends. And it's kind of nuanced. And for whatever reason, the algorithm really doesn't reward that.
No, maybe if our favorite professionals did dancing videos with quick cuts every 4 to 6 seconds, maybe they'd have a fighting chance. But
maybe get ready with me videos like in the lab.
I don't want to. If I see another bra come over your head, I'm gonna lose my mind. No, I think you nailed it, Ashley and Olivia. You were talking about just this difference between somebody who is influencing their space because they're, to your point, Ashley, good at social media versus educating their space. And where is the line that information, the influencer's information, goes from joyful to not so helpful to harmful to the communities that they are talking to, right? As they bring us along for this ride. So that's something that I think about 2 to 10 hours a day. And so here we are.
I just want to say, like, there is absolutely space for entertainment in running media. There are a lot of people who create content to entertain. But I think then there's like some threshold that certain people cross over where they're like, well, how do I monetize this? Or how do I, take this off this platform, and move my audience to wherever? And that's when it starts to become a little trickier. Entertainment is awesome. But when you try to entertain on a topic that you are not educated on or don't have the certifications or the qualifications to really give evidence-backed opinions on, that's where I think it becomes really tricky. But I love entertaining videos. Like, go do your crazy shit and have fun and video it. Just don't tell me that I should do it too, or that this is the way I should do it, or I need this thing in order to do it correctly,
Agreed. Yeah.
I've been watching people make ice cream and butter on their runs in their little hydration packs.
I saw that. That is crazy. So
that's my entertainment.
That's not in my algo yet.
Yeah, I have not come across that yet.
I'll send it to both of you.
It's too online.
I do think
it? It's not. It's
you
okay.
Want it. You want it.
It's entertaining.
Right. I do think too, like with brands who are choosing to work with these people, like I agree with Ashley, like there's 100% room for entertaining running content, fun running content. Like I get out the door sometimes because I'm watching something that made me laugh when I don't want to go on my run, whatever. But like, I think brands too, it's really easy to go for the shiny toy right here, which is 5 million followers. Like, of course, like you want brand reach, but I think too of just like making sure that if you are a brand or a position hiring people, that like you keep your mission in mind of what you want to be. If you're a nutrition brand or something, like your goal is to fuel runners, like go after people who are showing that, not necessarily someone who is like doing something else that doesn't fit with your brands. I think like that is much more impactful. It is difficult to not go for those like, the big numbers, but I think like the impact there is so much better. So I would say like, yeah, it's easy for me to sometimes get annoyed at an influencer or a content creator if it feels like it's not right. Put some, like, I think most of the blame should also just go on like, people who are making decisions, like make good decisions for your audience and for the people who are actually consuming your products.
100%.
No more Advil and Tylenol brand collaborations, please.
God, that feels like it was a lifetime ago.
I think it was last year.
It was
time.
1 year ago.
A lot going on.
Oh, that's such a good
example.
Such a good example of like a brand just not doing their due diligence and caring more about the reach than the actual education around their product.
Yep.
If you could change something tomorrow, if you had the power to change one thing in your industry and what you're both working on, what would you change? What would make your lives? We'll start with professional. If you want to do personal, we'll do that behind a paywall. What would you change professionally for yourself that would make your life easier and ultimately grow women's sports coverage?
I don't know if this is my like number one answer, but the thing that came to mind is like, if I could just eliminate trolls on the internet, that would be really great. I'm all for I love the engagement. My job is dependent on engagement and comments and interactions and whatever. However, I've been in a room with an athlete where they've refreshed their mentions and closed their eyes because of the nasty things that they were getting in their comments to them, to their partners, it's just truly disgusting. And then that in women's sports is, even worse. And I don't know if I see it getting better. As women's sports gets more popular, that means many other things around it are going to get more popular, including betting. And then that's a whole nother level of people being horrible to people on the internet. So yeah, I think I would eliminate, not even toward me, just people being rude to athletes online. It's disgusting. And I don't know how people do that and then just go back to like a different tab of their browser and type something else in their job. Like, boo. That's what I have to say.
So we don't have trolls. Well, no, I'm sure we still have trolls. If we're living in a dream world and changing things tomorrow, this would assume that I have unlimited funds and I would hire like 6 more people to help me produce the magazine, because we have such a small team right now that we are all wearing so many hats and it gets so intense getting close to shipping the magazine to the printer, which we just did yesterday for issue 3, to have like 6 more people to help do certain jobs would make it so that we could just do more. And that's what I want to do. I want to do more. And right now I am limited by the time that I have. That's a less sexy answer, but
no, it's good.
I need like 7 more hours in the day and 6 more people to help me. And we could just make a banger of a magazine like monthly.
More hours of the day, better sleep.
But then we'll just take on more and then we'll be even more busy.
I was going to say, I don't want to, as a fellow, not in the same, but a fellow woman in business, I don't want either of you to have more hours in your day. Okay. I don't want that.
That's why I need more people.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. We need more resources, right?
Yes.
We need more resources.
Yes. I think just across the board, more resources for women's running, women's sports, so that the women who are doing the most within these industries can do what they do best and delegate some other things.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. And Olivia, we should get rid of trolls.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, but what's tough for, as a male, what I say sometimes is a lot of things I never understood. I always talk to runners when I run with other women and, you know, feeling unsafe and me just, you know, never having that. It crosses my mind now more that there's understanding around it, but it wasn't something as a 20-year-old, 30-year-old I ever thought about. But even with trolls, I can kind of, I don't really get a lot. Like, people just don't like me, and that's okay. But they're not trolls; they're just haters. But women, man, like, you can go through.
Yeah, why don't you go? You can go on my page after this, Nick, and you can look at. You saw it, okay?
I see. Right. I see it. I wish
they love. It's whether it's your looks or the fact that you whether you're a mom or you don't have a child, or they assume or your orientation, or, you know, they just have something to say about everything except the subject matter, which is always fascinating. And I think that I cannot imagine what it would be like, Olivia, to be somebody who is attacked for their job, like their literal job on a platform that is supposed to be fun, engaging, and inviting. So that must be so tough. And
it's tough.
To Nick's point.
Yeah, I don't even know.
If they were a man. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I don't even know. The whole thing is not totally gendered. It happens to everyone who is in a spotlight. But for women especially, it's like truly gross. And then people try to have an ounce of nuance, like look at the half marathon last weekend, and then athletes defend themselves and they're torn a new one, and they're the ones out there running, and the people trolling are, you know, could never touch that time for 100 meters.
I would like to retire the phrases hot take and unpopular opinion from the internet.
They're never hot take.
Talking about what happened this weekend, it's just, you're setting yourself up. One, I mean, you know, it's somebody looking for engagement. I feel like that's just a dead giveaway that somebody's like, I want to piss people off. I want to engage people, not in a positive way. And half the time they're just uneducated takes. It's somebody who just doesn't understand what happened in a certain scenario, or I don't know. I agree with you. I saw some of the comments from this weekend, and it's just like, it's okay to not post. It's okay to just like sit this one out. If you don't have personal experience or some kind of expertise in the topic area, you can just not post.
Yeah. Just seeing Jess like post so much and have to defend, like, here's where the turn is, and here's how I couldn't remember, and here's what the video looks like, and people are still just attacking her. And it's like attacking her when she's already suffering through this. Like, it's not like you're attacking the person who had the thing happen that's terrible and telling them they're wrong and yelling. It's too much. It makes me so sad.
Yeah. Bad energy.
Yeah.
Well.
Ooh.
Oh, Olivia, Ashley, we have some top secret guest interview questions, and you two happen to be the guests. So, Coach Nick, will you take it away?
We're going to take it away. All right, everyone. We'll go alphabetized unless you want to change your order. There's no rules here. Question the first. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
If you're a little bit scared, it means you're doing the right thing.
I would say, don't take myself so seriously. And then in running, stop looking down. Keep my head up.
Yeah. Always look ahead. That's a good one. All right. Good one. All right. What's the one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
I was a cheerleader in high school. Amanda's surprised.
I'm not your energy though. Like, you give hype woman energy. It's more so like I'm just picturing Ashley.
Like Bring It On, Eliza Dushku, the gymnast.
Okay. Yeah, no, I wasn't ready for it.
Love it. surprised about me. I don't know if it's actually secret, but I'm like I'm big ARMY. I'm a big BTS fan. Going to see them in concert. Already have it lined up. That's what's playing in my ears a lot of time when I'm on the treadmill. I'm ready.
Awesome. All right, guys. The third question number 3. What advice would you give to women who want to build in this space?
I'm going to quote Nike here and say, just do it. I mean, you have to just do it. If nobody else is doing it, why not you?
Love it. So don't feel like you have to just follow a blueprint that's been done before. It's probably been created by a man, and go into it with your own perspective. No offense.
No, you don't.
No. I don't take offense.
We don't apologize.
Yeah, we don't. I'm here for
Yeah,
it.
but that's the third piece of advice.
Yeah.
You don't apologize. We stand on business. Olivia, we'll go backwards now. Olivia, if folks want to find you, work with you, learn more about everything you're doing with OnBase and beyond, where can we do that?
Sure. Follow me on social. It's my first and last name, Olivia Witherite. Threads, I'm a yapper, Instagram, TikTok. I also run a sports job newsletter that
good.
Thank you. That compiles sports jobs for people looking to work in the industry. I think that that's another passion of mine, is helping people get into sports jobs in a tough industry. So you can also see that every Monday.
And then should I just go?
Yes.
I was waiting for you to invite me.
I'm so sorry. It's me. It's me.
You can also find me on social, first name, last name, and then at RunHer Mag for the magazine. RunHerMag.com is where you can subscribe, and make sure you subscribe soon because issue 3 is coming April.
Yay.
Very excited. Thank you both for being on. This was incredible. And everyone listening, we hope you enjoyed this episode. I know you did. Wherever you are listening, Spotify, Apple, watching on YouTube, rate and review this episode. Give us 5 stars wherever you hear us, and you can reach out to Coach Nick or me at any time, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.